Welcome to Nobody's Talking Cinema, Episode 3. And today's guest is my good friend, Max Tommarchi. Good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What is it about a horror movie that draws us into it? They're so disturbing sometimes.
Yes.
So it's almost like a side of our mentality that we should not really be proud of.
No, we shouldn't. I think that it depends on the type of movie. Because even the horror movies have subgenres per se.
Right.
You know, you got the spiritual ones like The Exorcist, or you got psychological horror movies. I would consider Seven technically a psychological horror. So the so-called slasher flicks. Just a small part. I think the slasher flicks, like Friday the 13th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 27, however they made. I think that the reason why people are so attracted to it is because at the end of the day, it really is fake, and people start to wonder, like, oh, how did it get Jason to decapitate that guy? Oh, they used a dummy. Oh, the special effects.
Right.
I really think what it comes down to is they know it. They like it because they know it's fake. You got the fake head, the fake blood, the fake everything. But the ones that pretty much mess with your mind, I think that those are fascinating because I guess it touches us inside. The same way, comedy makes us laugh and gives us that emotion. I think the horror movies that make us understand not what we like, but what is it that we fear.
Right.
If I think I kind of made that clear. I think that's
it's an interesting point.
It's an emotional thing. I think it's more of an emotion.
I think the ones that have disturbed me the most were the ones on a religious level because, again, your religious upbringing, so that's like a reality to you where when you're watching A Dawn of the Dead, it's ridiculous and you almost feel superior as you're yelling at the screen saying, no, don't go in there.
Of course.
What's wrong with you? So those kind of films, and you're right, there's a wide variety of what constitutes being a horror film. Whether it's, The Haunted House, the old Vincent Price type horror films, which were disturbing in their own way. Yes. And I know they were in an era where you couldn't show certain things, but they were weird. I remember there was a couple of those Vincent Price films growing up that I remember stumbling across when I was probably too young to watch them. Yeah, and kept me up nights.
Yes.
But I recently went up on Rotten Tomatoes and looked up the top 200 horror movies, and I realized there were probably a good 50% of them I've never even seen.
There are quite a few that I haven't seen either, and unfortunately, probably because I have kids in the house. Among the most recent, Get Out. I heard it's excellent. I believe it got nominated for some awards. So I need to catch up a little more, but over the last, I'll say, 10, 15 years, I've noticed it's become more difficult to actually scare audiences. I feel that audiences seem to be a little more, I use the word desensitized before we even started filming, but that's what I feel. I feel that some of the audiences today, that's not even fair. I would say over the last 20 years have become more desensitized, probably due to the internet era, probably because we have cell phones. The first time I thought that was when I saw the re-release of The Exorcist in 2000, a movie that freaked me out when I saw the TV version when I was a kid. I was surrounded by people who were literally laughing at the screen, but yet my parents went to see it in the movie theater back in 1973, 74 when it came out, and there's even footage on YouTube where they had to bring ambulances, people in shock, feeling sick and so forth. So how times have changed. People seem to be a little more susceptible back then for a variety of reasons.
Bread. Give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation,
but deliver us from the evil one.
Save me, O God, by thy name. By thy might defend my cause. Proud men have risen up against me, and men of violence seek my life. But God is my helper, and the Lord sustains my life. In every need he has delivered me. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Save your servant.
Who places her trust in thee, my God.
Be unto her, O Lord, a fortified tower.
In the face of the enemy.
Let the enemy have no power over me.
And the son of iniquity be powerless to harm her.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell,
Lord, hear
Paris,
my
you
prayer.
faithless
My cry,
swine.
come unto me,
The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Let us pray. Holy Lord, Almighty Father, everlasting God, and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who once and for all consigned that fallen tyrant to the flames of hell, who sent your own...
Right, but it is interesting because it's like, where do you go from here as a horror filmmaker because of that combination of desensitizing of the audience, so we can't just keep getting more and more gory.
Yes,
I think as a genre, it's probably the most difficult to find creativity at this point, because if ever there's been a genre where it's been done, it's kind of the horror genre. So as a filmmaker, I look at this and go, I want to see things where there's more genuine surprises and thrills and shock as a filmmaker tool than gore.
Absolutely.
And that's why some of these films like The Conjuring and some of the, like a movie like The Ring.
Yes.
The Ring came
Yes.
out, and that was creepy. It was. I remember my kids stumbled across that years ago, and it was like, yeah, that's truly creepy, and I enjoy that more than the gore.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes, because the attack, the attack is supposed to be psychological.
Right.
The attack is not supposed to be, oh look, how many heads can you decapitate, or how many arms and legs, or the torso open up, whatever. Right. At the end of the day, you're watching special effects and you're like, oh man, you're just like, wow, that's really cool how they did that, and it's fake. But when the attack is psychological, you tend to relate more to it. Dario Argento, the Italian horror master, once said that he seldomly used a gun in his horror movies because he figured that 90% of the people in the audience never got shot, so they have no idea how it feels. It's like, but he's like, at least definitely 90% of audiences at least once in their life have cut their finger, even through a paper cut. So he'd rather use a knife, because then the audience has an idea of how it feels.
That's
so
actually a brilliant point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and that's where the attack has to be psychological. So you can show me all the decapitations that you want, but when I know it's fake, when I know that that's corn syrup or whatever,
and that's where the desensitization, as far as even like the independent filmmakers and the film festivals that gear towards the horror film, you see a lot of that. You see that it's very much become, well, I can do this now. I have the special effects tools, even as a low budget filmmaker. So we can do it. And I think that's what's translating into a lot of people doing it. But again, it becomes more of the same. It's like it's what you see on an independent low budget level now is as good as the original Halloweens and things that we grew up with. But is that a good enough reason to do it?
No, the great reason, once again, is I think we need to figure out in today's society, or shall we say the audience that we're going to, what is it that freaks them out?
Right.
You can take the movie The Bicycle Thief, which is an Italian neorealistic movie. If you really think about it from a certain point of view, it's actually a horror movie, because he needs his bicycle in order to put food on the table. Somebody stole his bike on his first day of work. That's a horror film per se. Now, you take that concept and you maybe expand on it more than it is in the movie, where the protagonist, from being a humble, hardworking father and husband, what is he willing to do to get that bike back? In the movie, spoiler alert, in the movie he gets he steals another bicycle, but it gets caught. Well, and he stops there because he realizes he was becoming the very thing that he didn't want to be.
Right.
Well, what if he's so desperate to put food on the table that he'll maybe kill someone to get the bicycle, to get a bicycle, survival of the fittest kind of thing, and he's becoming a monster. So I'm saying the concept, you can take any concept and turn it into a horror movie.
And then Pee Wee Herman did his own version of that one.
This box contains over 217 bits and pieces of information.
evidence. What's missing from this picture? It's just me, without my bike!
Hey man, you're new to this turf. We don't take kindly to strangers coming around here.
When Pee-wee had his bicycle song.
Oh, that's correct. I forgot about that. I haven't
I
seen that in years.
I wonder if he was influenced by that movie.
It's possible. It's possible. You're right. You're right.
Some of the big names in horror. Okay, as directors, of course, George Romero.
Oh yes.
Okay, now I didn't even realize there was a movie called Land of the Dead, which came out
back in, I think in the 2000s something.
Right.
I saw it once. I think with John Leguizamo was in it.
I don't know. I saw this listed in one of the lists, and I was like, "What?" Because there was Dawn, there was Day, there was Night of the Living Dead.
I remember watching it once. I don't consider, again, I remember liking it, but it didn't really leave an impression on me. It probably was not one of his best. Still
I think those movies were better in the older versions, the cheesier versions, where they looked more silly.
Well, here's how I interpret his movies. I never see them as an actual horror movie. I always interpret them as a satire of our society.
Right.
I mean, in Dawn of the Dead, it's pretty obvious that he's saying that they're not the zombies, we're the zombies.
Right.
You know, show me commercials, show me any type of publicity, and you know, I need to buy that vacuum cleaner. I need to buy. There's that one part where they're in the mall, and you see the zombies.
Right.
That
great,
is
great,
great metaphor towards us as a society.
Now then, there's the 70s horror films, the Omen, The Exorcist, Carrie, the original Carrie, which still
it still holds its own.
Right.
Which I believe that you could press the buzzer, but essentially that pretty much is Dr. Jean Grey, where kind of the inspiration, not Dr. Jean Grey, but of what she become her evil side. So Carrie is really a sweet girl until she really gets ticked off and burns the town to hell, you know.
And it's interesting how some of these characters did, I don't say ruin careers of people, but Carrie for a long time. You look at Sissy Spacek, and that's all you saw. It's like The Exorcist.
Well,
you know.
Yes, but although Sissy Spacek, I believe, had an outstanding career.
She did.
Afterwards. Eventually.
Yeah.
Linda Blair probably still a fantastic performance. I just, unfortunately, she unfortunately in quotes, I'm sure she had a phenomenal career, but I don't remember her in anything else but
how does a role like that disturb you going forward?
Disturb me as the audience?
No, as an actress. That's the other aspect of horror films is something that I think isn't part of other filmmaking. Okay, you play a superhero, you're not going to go through life so screwed up necessarily. But some of the content of some of these horror films, especially with young actors, how does that leave an impression on them, and what does it do to them? Because it's got to be freaky kind of. I mean, I just made a short film. I showed you the teaser for it. In it, there's a horror aspect, and one of the characters keeps having a flashback to when she was a child. And while we were filming those scenes in the basement, in the dark basement, it was creepy.
Yes.
And I mean, here's this 9-year-old girl.
That's a great question. If I remember watching the making of The Exorcist, there's a lot of things that she did that she didn't realize that what the actual character was doing.
Right.
The infamous crucifix scene, if I remember correctly, this is something it would be good to just revisit. I believe the director told her, just take this and stab the box. There was a box in front of her.
Okay.
And then after they would do the scene, I think they gave her ice cream or something like that. So there's a lot of things in the movie that she did at the time that she didn't realize what she was actually doing.
Interesting.
So, because, I mean, I don't think you're going to tell a 12-year-old girl, hey, listen, take the crucifix. Right. This is what you do. This is what's in the script. Right. I doubt that a director
would you let your 9-year-old or 12-year-old kid, if they got cast in a movie, do all that kind of stuff?
I would. I definitely
be a little concerned.
I would be concerned, and I think that because there has to be some sort of intelligence between the parents and the director and the producer.
How about films like Phantasm?
Oh man, I haven't seen those in years.
Right?
Oh man, you know what?
I mean, these probably set the tone in a lot of ways for what was to come.
Yes, and I think here's what I do now. If I watch Phantasm now, I mean, it's one of those movies. They're not bad because I rewatched it not too long ago. When I say too long ago, I'm talking about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I think that I would love to know how much influence did Dario Argento have towards these movies, because the thing about the Argento movies is that, like Phantasm, it's almost like watching a bad dream. And I can't remember who said this, but they said that Argento movies make no sense. And because they make no sense is why that they're so horrifying. Because, you know, when you have a dream, you wake up, you just you feel.
It makes sense when you wake up, but instantly
you start
thinking about it and you go...
Exactly. So Phantasm is, I think that, I know that they're rated R, but I almost feel like that the target audience was somewhere between 13 to 16 years old. I don't know why.
The Thing.
Masterpiece.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because the horror of that movie is not much of special effects, which are timeless. It's the psychological aspect, the paranoia. Who's the thing? Who is the monster? The fact that at one point, spoiler alert, he actually shoots someone who's human, therefore he becomes a murderer. It's amazing.
Obviously, there's all different genres, like we've talked about. You've got the religious ones. Mm-hmm. You've got movies like The Thing, and of course, Alien could even...
Alien is a sci-fi horror.
Right.
Actually, I would actually argue that it's the godfather of sci-fi horror.
Right.
Maybe you can't, like you say, once you do it, you can't do it again. How many imitations there have been of Alien? It's a ton. Maybe The Thing at one point was...
Have you ever seen Event Horizon?
Yes, I have. And I can't... Oh, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. It's actually one of the most underrated sci-fi horror movies I've seen. As you can see, I actually slipped out of my head.
Right.
There's something about it that is missing, and I can't point my finger to what it is. But it's definitely, it still creeps me out when I see it.
Right. It just missed the mark.
Just missed the mark to being a masterpiece.
Right.
It's good, but it's just missed the mark to being...
Now, let's go into another whole area of horror, which probably is the area that started it all. Mm-hmm. Monster movies. I mean, Dracula, Frankenstein, Werewolf, Creature from the Black Lagoon, all of that stuff that our parents grew up with.
Yes.
When you watch those, like if you watch an old monster movie, do they do what they need to do still on a fear level, on a suspense level?
Unfortunately, it doesn't, because of the fact that I think it's because it's been parodied so much.
Right.
I mean, let's be serious. Dracula, when it first came out, from 1933, 34, and all the Dracula movies and the Frankenstein movies, then you get a series called The Munsters. So growing up as a kid, all those old movies didn't frighten me.
Right, Young Frankenstein has kind of damaged the Frankenstein.
Oh, it actually has.
What it would be like to see a Bela Lugosi portray that role 40, 50 years later. Because to me, that is Dracula. Just the expressions, the faces, the creepiness, to me, that all the different Draculas that have come out, that is still, to me, Dracula. I know there's been amazing portrayals of Dracula. Probably maybe even better ones.
Possible.
But it's sort of like just watching Babe Ruth and saying, I wish I could see that person play ball today, when you try and compare.
Compare it, yes.
And it just would have been interesting to see some of these old-time actors with today's filmmaking.
Well, Bela Lugosi's, please refresh my memory. Was his a silent movie?
No.
No, it wasn't silent.
No.
So, okay. Because I know that, especially because it was black and white, the facial expressions are more exaggerated.
Right.
So for the time, I think that it was the Dracula that you wanted to see on screen.
Right.
But because cinema has changed and our eyes are more used to with color and all that, seeing those facial expressions is more exaggerated, and we almost see it as a parody.
Now, how many nightmares were there?
Okay, Nightmare 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Final Nightmare, and then I believe I think there were 7 plus the remake. Of the ones I saw, the number 1 a masterpiece, 2 underrated, but inferior to the first one. 3 is awesome, but it's not a horror movie.
See,
for me,
this is
3
what
is not a horror
amazes
movie.
me about you.
Yeah,
To me, all of these movies, they blend together.
rewatch them.
I guess I'd have to go back
You have
and
to go back.
rewatch them.
1, masterpiece. 2, underrated. 3, it's a blast. Then after that, it just went down. Except for the very last one Wes Craven made, he did something original. He kind of broke the. I guess he blended the two worlds together. The real world. You should check the last one out. It's pretty good. The last one, the very last one he made.
Now, is Stephen King a genius, or is he a conceptual genius? And by that I mean he seems to repeatedly come up with concepts that are amazing, interesting, draw you in. I watched a movie, and often I feel the payoff isn't there.
I'll say in his defense, even though shame on me, I never read any of his books. I've watched the movies. But the people who have read the books, there seems to be some discussion where, like many times it happens, the movie does not follow the book the way it's intended. He was actually very upset that Stanley Kubrick changed the ending. But again, we have two groups. The groups that read the book and watched the movie and say that the movie is actually superior, and others that say, no way, the book is actually superior than the movie. So
Right.
I wouldn't judge Stephen King on the movie. I would judge Stephen King on the books that he wrote, because at the end of the day, the directors and the writers take freedom and change the movies around. Which, by the way, I recently saw Dr. Sleep. I liked it. I think it's a well-made movie with some.
Now that is
parts.
a sequel to The Shining.
It is a sequel to The
written
Shining
by Stephen King.
The book written by Stephen King, and I forgot who the director was, but I again checked out the behind the scenes. He blended because Stephen King was not happy with how The Shining came out with Stanley Kubrick. He talked to Stephen King and said he wanted to blend the book, the movie, the sequel that he wrote, kind of blend everything and try to take everything that was great and blend it together and give his blessing. And I think it's one of the most underrated movies.
Is The Shining a masterpiece in your view?
Yes, and I will tell you why. Because we started this conversation talking about what is it that, like, why do we like horror movies? What I like about horror movies, it makes me understand something about myself. If about 20 years ago, if you told me what was the scariest movies of all time, I would say The Exorcist was number 1, and The Shining was number 2. Well, after 2 kids, getting married and having 2 kids, I will tell you right now that The Shining is number 1 and The Exorcist is number 2. Why? Because the idea that a father could lose control and attack his family, for me, is horrifying and it makes me understand what my values are. My values are my wife and my kids, and I would absolutely not do anything to hurt them. And the idea that an entity can take over me and hurt them is something that makes me have nightmares.
I think more than any other film, The Shining is like a series of connecting images where a lot of great films and movies, you come out talking about scenes or quoting lines of dialogue. And The Shining, to me, when I remember coming out of that movie, just scenes like the way it's filmed when he's standing at the bar.
Yes.
And the way Kubrick filmed that. And, you know, obviously the classic moments of the bat on the stairs where I'm not going to hurt you, Wendy. And the smashing in the door. There's just...
I never laid a hand on him, goddammit. I didn't. I wouldn't touch one hair on his goddamn little head. I love the little son of a bitch.
But even things like driving the big wheel up and down the hallways, that kind of imagery, and of course the classic maze at the end, and then freezing to death. The image of Jack Nicholson sitting there frozen, I think all of us can still picture that exactly the way we first saw it.
Yes.
And that is the genius of Kubrick, and what makes that movie so compelling is the way it was shot, I think. And I like when I see like a Dr. Sleep is coming out, I mean, Kubrick was a unique filmmaker. And it's sad that you can't have that same aspect.
The director paid absolute 100% respect to Kubrick. Paid 100% respect to Kubrick and paid 100% respect to Stephen King. I won't say why, because
so it's worth seeing.
It's definitely worth seeing.
Okay.
I thought that Ewan McGregor was phenomenal.
All right, let's end with the future of horror. Where, like, can you name right now a popular horror film? Because when I looked at Rotten Tomatoes, I saw there's a movie that came out last year called Us, or it came out in 2019.
Yes, again, one of those that I've missed, but I definitely want to see again. I got kids in that. I was able to watch Dr. Sleep the other day because my son was out, the other one was on the computer, and I
just watched recently because I hear they're making a sequel to it, In a Quiet Place.
I haven't seen that either, but I heard,
Right, and I watched it, and it almost seems like right now there's this this move to go backward a little bit. They're not R-rated, they're not gory. They're In a Quiet Place. I thought was good. I don't know if you know what it's about.
No, I don't know. Don't tell me anything.
Okay. But
it's PG-13. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's PG-13.
Go ahead.
And it seems to be missing. It seems like what horror movies are missing is that uniqueness. I don't know if it's just that we're desensitized or if we've run out of ideas, but I don't feel I'm seeing things in the horror genre. It's almost like horror is now like ripe for someone to make a breakthrough. Yeah. Anyway,
hey,
thanks for stopping by.
Pleasure. Thank you.
See you on another episode soon.
All right. See you guys. Ciao.
Okay.
When I give the word, throw the first switch.
You've got it, Master.
Get ready. Get set. Go! Throw the second switch. Throw the third switch.
Not the third switch.
Throw it, I say! Throw it! Flies! Flies!
creation! Ah!